Welcome back, practicing leaders. Today, we're going to be talking about a topic which I think will strike true for most of you. You're going around, you're helping your peers, you're making sure that you're getting your job done, and at the same time, you're helping everybody else at the same time. Have you ever run into the situation where when you get to the end of the year and you're looking at what your rewards are, looking at how you're being recognized, and it feels like you're not being recognized for all the work that you're doing to try to help others succeed? This is where the message I could probably provide is that silence is not golden. This week on the Practicing Leader podcast, we're going to talk about how do you get the recognition that you think you should be getting, and what are some steps you can be taking in order to be able to recognize others as well. I'm your host, Parul Bhargava, and let's discuss. If you're putting in the effort to try to help others succeed, you should be recognized for those efforts. This podcast is not about how do you get recognition for things you didn't do. This is not about how do you get recognition for the sake of getting recognition. This is about how do you get recognition when you truly are trying to support others and being successful. We've all had the situation where we have gone through, we've done our best to try to help others. When it came down to brass tacks and it came down to when rewards were due, we often are overlooked. That has happened to any one of us any number of times. What we're going to be going over are one, what is the importance of that? Two, how do you specifically address it? And then three, if you're the one that's receiving the help, what should you do to make sure that the people that you're asking for help from are receiving the recognition that they should? So let's start off with why this is important. What is the impact of people not knowing what you're working on? As you're going through and you're trying to figure out, well, how do you prioritize? What kind of work do you need to do? What kind of work are you trying to complete? How are you helping others? The thing that you'll need to pay attention to is if everyone doesn't know necessarily what you're working on, specifically your manager doesn't know what you're working on, they won't be able to identify or help you prioritize the work that does need to get done. This is where you should be focusing your time and trying to help them understand these are the types of things that you're helping people with and why you believe those things are important to get done. There are also those groups of people which will say, well, I have no idea what that person does. I have no idea what that person is working on. So they clearly don't deserve higher rewards than me. Now, for those types of individuals, not very much you can do about them, but what you can try to do is educate as best you can. And we'll go over some strategies of how you do that education in a way that doesn't seem like you're trying to put yourself up on a pedestal, but at the same time communicating information effectively. And lastly, the question that we often have to ask is if people don't understand the value that you're bringing, what kind of judgment are they going to pass when they do pass it? If they don't understand your contribution to how someone else became successful, how are they supposed to understand how do they rate you and how do they bring you along for when somebody should be rewarded and you should be part of that consideration? In the past in my career, I've had situations where I have folks have come to me and asked me for help when it came time to saying, okay, well, this project is now successful. My name was not necessarily included in the efforts in terms of making it successful. It wasn't recognized that I was actually contributing to the success of those individuals. Now, there's not very much I can do about it in the past, but what I can do is say, what did I learn from that? Or what can I take away from that to say, how do I make sure that others understand my contribution to it, irrespective of whether or not somebody else calls it out? One of the things that I've leaned on in terms of how do I address this or how do I tackle this kind of problem is metrics. How do you deliver metrics to individuals to help them understand how you're bringing consistency and delivery for the space that you own, or delivery in the space that you're helping somebody else deliver on? This in conjunction with sending out regular newsletters or communications about the success of the project that you're working on or how you're helping somebody else be successful. There's nothing stopping you from sending out a note and saying, hey, I was able to get X, Y, and Z completed, and in order to be able to help so-and-so out. And it's important to make sure that your management understands that you're doing this. That way they can also be aware and be like, oh, look, you did a great job of helping that person out. I'm glad you did that. Other thing I've done in the past is being able to provide quarterly business reviews and stating, here are all the things that we worked on in the past quarter, and here's how we helped other teams succeed. And lastly, ask others to speak up on your behalf. More often than not, people will not necessarily remember to speak up for you unless you ask them. Here's the thing, they could say yes, they could say no, but at least you've made the request and then they can choose to do it. And if they put it in writing, make sure you put it in your Yay Me folder and make sure to share that with your boss. How about the situation where you're asking somebody for help? What should you be doing in order to be able to make sure you are recognizing the help that you are receiving? First off, send a note to the person saying thank you. Make sure that you're doing whatever you can to acknowledge the effort that they're putting in to assist you. Sometimes it's part of their day job, sometimes it's not. And this is where taking the time to acknowledge it is going to go a long way. No one likes to help somebody that is not thankful for that help. Taking the time to not take that person for granted is important. If you want to take it a step further, send a note to their boss and tell them how much help that they've been. Tell them how much effort that they put in to help you and assist you and how they made you successful. Tell them the impact of that help. One step further from there is communicating both to their boss and your boss about how much help that person has been. The idea being is if you're sharing this information amongst the management team, that way you are communicating how the success that you're experiencing was due to, or at least in part, helped by this work this individual did. Be vocal in the support of this person. This is where it's important for you to communicate that you've asked for help, that you've gotten the help, and that you're thankful for it. Make sure that you're doing whatever you can to be vocal about it. Too often people will be, yeah, thanks, and then kind of move along and then not state anything about it and never communicate anything about it, but then more than happy to take the benefits of the help that you've gotten to talk about your own success. That's easy to do. That takes no effort. What you should be doing is communicating all the people that actually assisted you and getting you to that level of success that you're experiencing. Recognition at work is always difficult. You don't want to be seen as promoting yourself, but at the same time, there's a difference between promoting yourself and communicating the work that you're doing. And this is where silence is not golden. Take the time to communicate the work that you're doing, how you're helping other individuals be successful. And then if you're that individual is getting the help, take the time to communicate how much help it has been. If you have any questions about this podcast or any other, you can always feel free to go ahead and drop me a line. You can go ahead and give me a call at 206-651-4312 and leave a message. Or alternatively, you can send me an email at questions@thepraxisleader.com. I'll go ahead and weave it into whatever conversation we have in the next podcast and make sure that your question gets answered. This has been the Praxis Leader Podcast. My name is Parul Bhargava, and I'll talk to you next week.